first part of it is a description of Reston as a biophilic community, and it then shows major objectives. And then I do want to say that recently, this last iteration that you all have received, uh, because of the conversation we had with Mr. Stoner, the attorney from the county, uh, I didn't do what Barbara Byron had suggested before, which was a phraseology, it is expected that. Instead, I looked at other documents the county has put out, and I used action verbs under a title, recommendations. So that is the structure of this paper. So we have an overview with the biophilic, and then major objectives, and that starts with community design, under which there are 9 recs. Then we go, and these are all under sort of introductory things. So community design, eco health, resiliency, and then we go into resource specific objectives. And this is going to be more definite things we're talking about, such as there's a general resource sort of intro with 10 major recommendations. Soils has 3. Vegetation is all vegetation, including trees. There are 12 recs under that, recommendations. Then we go to 6 recs under invasive species. Then we jump in from vegetation to water, and water is complicated. Watersheds was part of it. Water resources in general, there are 2 recommendations. Then we go to stream and buffer areas. Buffer areas are primarily RPAs or ecological areas that we don't want to disturb. There are 2 recs there. Then we go to lakes and ponds. There are 3 recs. Then we begin stormwater management, which is technical, and Bill Penniman will walk us through that if you have questions, and I'm sure you will. 14 recommendations there under the guidelines, and then then we have 4 multi-part recommendations under technical, specific. These are specific metrics which are technical. Then we very much appreciate Joe Gorney nudging us to put a salt section in there. We have 6 recs on that. Aaron, climate has 7 recs. Sustainability talks about the built environment. So that's green buildings and green neighborhoods. There are 12 recs there. Then we have a section on noise, 7 recs, lighting, and then we have 3 very short text sections on EV charging, bird-friendly design, and food. So that's how the chapter is organized. In thinking about writing this chapter, Bill and I were cognizant to try to make it a tool very useful to the staff and to developers who will coming in. So we structured this with clear recommendations, and then the bullets are put in alphabetical order. So you can say the subject, the page number, and go to bullet 5 or number 5, and you can find it right away. And as the staff and Bill and I were reviewing this morning, it was very easy to have that conversation because it was fluid, it was fast, you knew you were all on literally the same page. So it works. There are 2 sections in the paper that have bullets that will be changed on recommendation of staff to go to ABC, like to hold it consistent. One was an error that I didn't do that. The other was on purpose because they weren't recommendations. One bullet was actual points of information. So that is, in essence, how we organized it and a little bit of the history. There has been a back and forth between Bill and I wrote something up, the staff took it, they redid it in completely text, And then, so we've gone back and forth a number of times. And I think we're at a pretty good place where there are still a few items of debate between staff and us. But I'm going to let Bill talk now and give a little bit of his perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So just as a reminder, we, Tammy and I presented in the task force approved our original draft chapter at the end of January. The staff and we had on and off discussions, and they spent time looking through, and they came back with the draft in early May. And then we've had more discussions and back and forth. And while Tammy lists, all these different recommendations and the numbers of them, the fact is virtually all of those were in the staff document that came out in beginning of May, and it's a reformatting that puts them in a list form, not a substantive change. There are a few areas where we have differences, but not necessarily disagreements. And the staff is going to be going back. We talked to them this afternoon and reviewed where those differences are, and they're going to go back and determine whether they're disagreements or not. But what I want to do is focus on the areas where there are these differences, just so we can highlight them. I don't think they're earth-shattering, but here they are. On pages 5 to 6, the fact that I'm jumping to page 5 to 6 tells you there's an awful lot with already. I don't think there's any disagreement at all, or even a difference of substance. Page 5 and 6, trees. On item number 4, we put in somewhat more detail, as we had in the January version, about what ought to be in a management agreement between a developer and the county. The reason for having a management agreement at all is the concern that, based on some experience, that after a tree is planted, it can wither and die because they already passed a test, which was to plant a tree. But the important thing is that the tree grow and eventually succeed. So there are management agreements of that sort referred to in other plan area plans. So we thought it was a good idea, and we thought the greater detail was valuable. In paragraph 5, we refer, as we did in the earlier versions, to a goal of a Reston-wide 45% tree canopy goal. That's a big picture goal. It's not applicable to every single project, obviously, but it seems to be in the range of where we are, maybe a little higher than where we are, but it seemed like a fair descriptive goal. We wanted to be sure that in item 8, the trees and plants, we use the native to Fairfax, which is consistent with RA's recommendations. I think staff has a little looser language, but I don't know if there's ultimately going to be a disagreement on that. And we put in greater detail on soil quality and quantity, some of which can be found in other documents the county publishes. Maybe all of them can, but our goal was to have it here because we think that developers and the public, it'd be find it convenient to have it there so that we can maximize the chances of the plantings being successful. But let me just say something on that. We took out, as we were advised to do, all the musts and shalls. So everything is worded as a recommendation. So it is not as strong as we might have liked, but it also is a little, to give some comfort to developers who might otherwise be grumpy about some of the things we have in here. Stormwater management, this was an area where, okay, first, just a minor thing, not minor to us, but we added in paragraph 3 on page 9, 2 areas with known flooding problems, because we just thought that should be part of the document since it's a document specific to Reston. I don't think there's a disagreement substantively about it. It just we thought it should stay in. Phosphorus run, page 10, number 1, phosphorus runoff language, that in the staff version, it applied, I think it was just to developments with a 1.0 or larger FAR, and we think it was a good suggestion, and it just ought to apply to all new developments. So again, I don't know that there's going to be a substantive disagreement that staff is going to be concerned about, but it's there, and it is a difference, which is why I mention it. The big area that has stirred some controversy, I know the business community wrote a letter to Walter, and one of the concerns they expressed was in the environment chapter, and they particularly objected to language that we had proposed for a requirement that in projects with development greater than 1.0 FAR, that they retain 1.2 inches. The first 1.2 inches should be retained on site. We based that on Tyson's and some other input we had actually gotten from staff. Staff came back with a softer requirement that the first inch be retained, or if it can't be retained, detained. It's not as strong as we would have liked, but it's in there. We went with that as a good start, but we made sure to add back in some language that staff may have inadvertently dropped, but to require that for 20, the longer duration, not the first inch, but even beyond that, if there's a 24-hour storm, a 10-year 24-hour storm, that there needs to be a reduction in the peak and total runoff. It's a formula built on the existing comp plan, somewhat stronger, but it's a formula in the comp plan. In any event, we added that back in, and we think it makes sense because if you have a 5-inch storm, you shouldn't be able to say, oh, well, I held the first inch back and the rest of the next 4 inches go flooding downstream. That I'm certain was not the staff's intent, and they will look at it, but we think this is a reasonable approach, and it's softer than what our original proposal was with respect to the first inch or so.
Hey, Bill. Sorry,
Yes.
it's Lynn. Do you want me to hold my questions until after you've gone through the whole chapter, or are you entertaining questions as you go along?
I can do it either way. Tammy, do you have a preference?
Not at all.
Want me just to get through it first and then take questions?
Yeah.
Why don't I do that? I mean, if this were oral argument, I would take your question anytime, but let me just sort of summarize what's in here.
I want to respect your format. That's all. Thank you.
Bill,
Yeah.
as you go through, please give page numbers so Lisa can keep up. So she
Got
doesn't
it.
know where to scroll.
Okay, that was page 10. Page 10 was the beginning of the stormwater runoff recommendations, and as it pertained to the items I've just talked about. On page 12, we also added a requirement that if somebody's got an exception and they have a less stringent standard that has been applied to them, then they should be required to at least notify downstream property owners that the flooding may be more intense than they would expect just from reading the comp plan, and make a plan to how they would address that problem if the problem arose. I don't think that should be deemed threatening to anybody, but it seemed like a good, sensible proposal. Salt management was something that the staff added in its May version. It went beyond what we had done before. We thought it was a great approach. We added some language to give it some a management plan, because I know just from experience that if developers have a contractor who just dumps a pile of salt, it's like walking on a ball bearing. Sometimes it's so thick and it stays there forever. So a plan for how you're actually going to manage the salt you put down on the sidewalk for everybody's safety and for the benefit of the environment. Pages 14 and 15, this is the area of green building standards. Now, again, there's some general language, just to recommend that builders incorporate multiple measures, maximize efficiency, minimize greenhouse gas and other pollution, to explain how they're doing it. That's pretty general. I don't think anybody will find that threatening, but it is something we added beyond what the staff had. Beyond that, though, a couple of things that I think are significant, and I'll draw people's attention to it, is on page 14, there on item 9, we strongly encourage new buildings in Reston to implement at least one of the following. And then it lists 5 measures that would significantly improve energy efficiency, significantly reduce greenhouse gases, and improve water runoff problems. So they're different. It doesn't require they all be implemented, although we would highly like that. But it just says pick one. It is again, it's a recommendation. It's a strong one, but our hope is if we can't say must, let us at least do this, and it forced the discussion with the staff to say, yeah, well, we decided to stiff you. We're not doing any of it. Or, we decided to do 2 of them. We think, and so it's a way of nudging, to use a psychologist's modern term, to actually do something, not just skip over things because they were on a long list and only recommendations.
These are on page 15.
14. Page 14, number 9. We also have a number 10 that if a building's undergoing major rehabilitation, measures should be taken to significantly improve energy efficiency and or install a green or purple roof. Now, page 15 is another set of items that are potentially important. All of these, most of these were in the staff document. A couple weren't, but they're not terribly threatening. In any event, you don't have to do all of them. Some are in here, but they also show up in connection with vegetation, like the 4th and 5th bullets. But in any event, these are additional things that people should be doing. Better HVAC systems, energy management systems, a variety of things there. And so we strongly encourage them to do some of these too. But again, we're trying to push them beyond complacency, beyond minimums, even though we're not allowed to say must or shall. And I think this is an intelligent way to do that. And then lastly, and then the rest of it is almost entirely drawn just from what the staff did. And so I think I've just highlighted all the remaining significant differences. I think it's a pretty balanced chapter. Would benefit Reston. It would help to make Reston better situated to stand out and stay ahead of climate change. The worst thing that we could do is keep building like it was the old days and then have buildings that are empty because somebody else came along later and built better buildings, which is where we're going to end up. So it also helps to underscore Reston's distinctiveness as a green community, a biophilic community, and also a sustainable community. So
Bill and Tammy, do you want to say something, and then maybe we could hear from staff?
Yes, please. On page 3, I cannot let this pass The Reston Association has just adopted, the board has just adopted a brand new spanking Reston Association Climate Action Plan. If you have not seen it, and I don't think many have, please go to that. We hope to have a hyperlink here. This would be recommendation under recommendation number 5. That is the most beautifully thought through, presented professional document. I highly recommend that everyone, staff and task force people and public, read that. It's phenomenal. So kudos to RA. Thank you so much. RA people have been amazing helping give us information, and I have to give them a shout out. Okie dokie.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you and Bill for getting this forward and pulling this all together. I did want to see St. Clair. Do you or Joe have any comments you want to make at this point? Because I know there are questions and comments from task force members too.
I think at this point, we just want to say, as Bill and Tammy mentioned, there was a meeting with staff this afternoon to kind of go over this draft. So staff will be taking a look at things. Like they said, there's some discussions to see, so staff will be reviewing it. We will be meeting again with Tam and Bill Tam and Bill to, work through anything. So at this point, I think we just wanted to see, again, be available for any questions that anybody has on what was discussed tonight.
Very good.
So what we're hearing has not been vetted. So this is not a staff and task force approved version.
That's right, Lynn, in the sense that, as I say, 90% of it is identical. I've just highlighted the only substantive differences that I think are out there. And obviously with the holiday weekend, staff understandably has not had time to absorb it and discuss it internally. This is our recommendation. At this point, staff may come back to us and talk about some further tweaks, but honestly, I think most of what is in here, they'll be, well, I won't speak.
Is this going to be presented back to the task force after staff has gone through and made any changes? I mean, what's the process there?
Well, I am trusting they won't make any changes.
Bill's an optimist. What will happen, Lynn, is that this is the chapter that will go to outreach. Simultaneously, staff will go through the details that Bill has just described, where we have minor differences, and the plan will be adjusted to that.
Okay, perfect. So this is going to go to the public outreach, and okay, perfect. Right. Thank you, Tammy.
So Lynn, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, never mind. I'll just, when it's my turn, I'll come.
Well, Lynn wanted to ask a question. I see she's typed one in, and I don't know that I can get to the last end of it. But Lynn, do you want to pose the question and I'll try to answer it?
Yeah, sure. So I went ahead and put it in the chat just in case I lost my connection. So my question, and I think it was on page 9 or 10, I can't remember which one, but you were talking about the requirement for developers to remediate on-site runoff, and that comparison to Tyson's Corner. And my question is, why would Reston, which is a planned community, have a less stringent requirement for remediation given our biophilic certification? And I would think that Reston should be setting the best practice for the county and the region as a whole. I mean, we've got a great opportunity here. So that's my question.
Okay,
thank you.
So in the first place, as I acknowledged at the time, the 1.2 inches was stricter than Tyson's. So 1 inch is what the Tyson standard was. It is still probably a little softer in that it says it be retained on site through low impact, about a variety of magic phrases are surrounding it, but
Water
it would
gardens.
be retained on site, or
Yes.
if that's not feasible, at least it's going to be detained and slowly released. That's the concept. I can't recall honestly whether Tyson's allowed specifically for the slow release alternative if retention wasn't feasible, but I know the builders have complained that sometimes, the rock is too hard or something. I don't know. It seemed to me like a fair way to advance the ball, and should work. And so I would go with the staff language. Obviously, I would be happy to have it absolutely retained, but I just don't know that that's saleable in any event. As I said, all these things are just recommendations. I wish I could require it.
The other point here is that purple roofs absolutely can retain 1.2 inches. And that is a relatively new tool. I don't think that has been written into a lot of plans. Or perhaps the staff is not familiar. If they're not familiar, boy, Bill and I can introduce them to a fellow who can make them very familiar and even take them on to and I would love to go on this too, a field trip to Culpeper, where a firm is actually running a study place that shows the effectiveness of purple roofs. And there are a whole bunch of different new things that are coming up, but to date, they can absolutely take care of 1.2 inches, 2/10 of an inch. Think about it. It's not a hell of a lot. What we do have to understand, however, is roofs in urban settings do not account for all of the parcel. So it can take care of the roofs for buildings, but the setbacks and the streets and the whatever, that's a different situation. So we're trying to be reasonable, but also we're well aware of the developer lobby not wanting to spend a penny they don't have to spend. And it is, Bill and I have been pushing the purple roof thing and the green roof thing before that for a couple years on the Reston Planning and Zoning, and it is like pulling teeth to get anybody to even ask questions about it. The tide is changing as the customer, the client, the leasee of these buildings or the buyer of the buildings want to have a more environmentally sustainable structure. So I think it's a mind game and an economic game, but hopefully with some cooperation and realization from the Board of Supervisors that this kind of thing has to be common, not an outlier, but has to be required, we can get there. We're sort of like the pioneers trying to elevate Reston, as you said, to a higher degree of responsibility for climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So I had one more question, and that is, have you all had any discussions about a requirement for redevelopment of those areas that have not put any stormwater, no remediation, no detention on site? Have you all had any discussion about requirements for any redevelopment to address, putting in water gardens or anything like that?
How that works, as far as I know from service on the planning and zoning, when somebody, you can't make somebody who has a property that doesn't conform when stormwater wasn't a thing or a law when they first developed. However, if they come forward to do something different, then all of the rules kick in. And John Carter and Walter can verify this, that then they're in for the whole deal. You have to remediate,
Okay.
you have to provide, you have to do what is the law now.
So that's a yes to my question then. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, are there any other questions? I see Gary has his hand up. Do you have a question, Gary?
I'm just gonna have a question that's very minor. If you could put the chapter back up, it's ultra minor, actually. If you go to, I think it's the bottom, it talks about the
Which
entities
page?
that are involved down, I think it's the bottom. But it
Of
was
what
sort of
pa-
talking
of what
about.
page?
What
Pardon?
page, Gary?
I don't,
The
I
bottom
can't,
of what page?
I think it was, I can't see it, I don't
What's the
know.
topic?
It was just the organizations affected. It's ultra minor. So it has Reston Association, Reston Town Center Association,
Page
Fairfax
what?
County. And I just wondered if RCC should be added to that. I can't tell you how minor this is.
No, I mean, I think, Gary, I've thought about it. I'm glad you brought that up. I think it should. It does not manage um, areas of, natural resources, but it is specifically engaged in creating a healthy and resilient community. So yeah, I think adding the RCC would make
That's on
sense.
page 1.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I
yeah. No, thank you for bringing it up.
yesterday or something and again today. So the other thing is, this looks to me like a great job by Tammy and you, Bill, and the county. And it looks to me like we're ready to go here. And I just hope we'll, vote on this tonight. That was the only other thing.
All right, thank you, Gary. Any comments, questions from anyone else?
I've got some, Walter, if you want.
Yeah, John, please.
Okay, one, I actually think this is stronger. This must and will and should and however is to me very weak language. I think the way you've written it is the strongest way with these active verbs at the beginning of sentence. I think that's an excellent way to do it. Two, I noticed it's a lot of statements like when there's a rezoning, you have to do X, Y, and Z. I think that should be pointed to the public projects as well as private projects, which tend to be the rezoning projects. So maybe take a look at this, at that. The flooding, thanks for putting the flooding in there. I think that was good. The couple places that we do have flooding in Reston, I think that was good. Let's see. The trees, the stormwater management, I think we are failing to a certain extent in our streets. And I wish that the trees that we plant along streets should count towards the tree canopy, which they don't in our rules today. I wonder, I don't know if this is the right place, but that's an unfortunate thing, given that we have so much development in the transit station areas. And one of the things, my favorite thing, and we're meeting on next Thursday, these troughs along streets that are inaccessible to people that are challenged in any way. You can't take a wheelchair through these troughs. You can't walk through the troughs very well. And so while I appreciate the requirements in our urban areas, sometimes they result in very poor solutions, and those look like these troughs along streets. So I would suggest maybe a sentence, if you could, when you have on-street parking, that you don't do these troughs or rain gardens so that you can get out of your car into the front door. Minor point is the
Can I
grid.
ask a question on that, John?
Yes,
Is
yes.
that in the urban design guideline?
No, it's not. It is
Oh, my
not.
goodness.
In fact, it's shown as a desirable solution. And it may be in some situations. It's just not when you have on-street parking, but because you can't get out of your car.
Know what you're talking about. Okay, maybe we can talk and we can get some wording.
Yeah.
That in.
The grid of streets, I noticed, and since Bill is on this as well, we have some grids that are too close to the streams, particularly in Wheelie West, north of the toll road, and we have some grids that cross streams. We might look at those, Bill, maybe when we get a chance to look at those. My last one is charging stations in multifamily. It's easy to ask townhouses to do their charging for each unit, at least to set it up. But we've struggled with multifamily and how to deal with those. A lot of people just they copy what's in the ADA law, which is 2%, which probably is not doing it very well. I wonder if we have something that we could do in multifamily, maybe hinting at if it's unbundled, it's one situation. If it's not, it's another situation. Just a thought.
Yeah, on that, John,
Yeah,
there is language in here which is basically language we got out of the staff's document from May, and it does provide for greater level of level 2 charging for multifamily.
I guess I missed
About
that.
half the part of it, yeah, it's on page 17. And
Uh-huh.
the only thing we added was that if somebody wants to install level 3 chargers, they can substitute that for multiple level 2 chargers, although we didn't give the exact number of ratios. But if they have a plan for how people, multiple dwelling units can share a level 3 charger, then that should be good too. So
That
we
would
tried to make it more flexible, but it's a much bigger number than that 2%, and it's in here.
Okay. And then my last is the length. It's awfully long. It's 20 pages. Most of these documents are
John,
like
it's only
3.
18. Only
18.
18.
Okay, well, I'm satisfied then.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more. The urban forest demonstration. I don't know if you remember this. We talked way back at the future, but I mean, way back a long time ago about doing a demonstration project in here for Reston is to create an urban forest system for Reston where we'd actually keep track of the canopy. I don't know whether that's worth putting in, but that was a thought, and we always struggle with who would actually be responsible for that. But it's a nice idea that in a biophilic community, we would actually keep track of our urban forest and see what works and what doesn't work. The reason I keep bringing up this and the troughs is our street trees are just faring really bad. And so something, I guess we're gonna work on this in the new year perhaps, but
So John, two things on the first place on the street trees. It never occurred to me that they wouldn't count toward the tree canopy.
yeah, I don't think they do. I don't think
This
they
is
do.
They're on
called,
VDOT right of ways, aren't they? Most
Doesn't
of them.
matter, doesn't matter.
I mean,
No, I
to
mean,
me,
they're
a tree
not
is a
on.
tree.
No, stop. They're on VDOT property that a developer cannot fiddle with. There's golly, you all know that VDOT is God on VDOT property. And, heaven forbid that some developer, I mean, RA can't even mow without a contract, for God's sake.
Yeah,
So
Well,
there's
that's
a
true.
legal thing there, and I'd love to solve it, but that is the reality. So I don't know how how you make these things merge that aren't mergeable. Or, hey, let's not say they're not mergeable. We're Reston, we'll make it work, but how?
But
Man.
back to, can I jump
maybe we're
in?
going too far. Maybe we're going too far in this. This isn't the time to put this together, but it is a problem in Reston.
I
I
agree
think-
with you.
I think it's easy to count. I believe we have 4 trees in the right of way in Reston, all of Reston. So,
Please, let's,
okay. I don't mean to sidetrack this one.
No problem. Thank you, John. Any other comments or questions? Any comments from staff on moving forward tonight?
They can speak up during our conversation this afternoon. they expected we would move forward tonight,
Okay.
subject to the recognition that we may get additional feedback from them sooner, sometime after that. And that's totally understandable.
Yep. Not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, right, Bill?
Right. And we can
And
even
we're-
make it more perfect.
And we really want to pay attention to John Carter's suggestions. So we're going to have to get together with him. But you all on the who will be maybe voting would know what he said. And if you have questions about what he said, don't agree with it, speak up. Otherwise, I'll try to get with him and get language put in.
I think among the most important is the language that says, well, only if you're doing a rezoning does this matter, and we know that's where it matters mostly, but I would point this to public as well as private projects.
So would you suggest that we could do that simply by adding a sentence somewhere that says that the guidance here, will apply to the public projects as well as,
maybe that would
why don't we
work.
just add a
Yeah.
sentence to that effect? I'm sure Walter's in favor of it.
Yeah.
Right, Walt?
No
Fairfax is
comment.
doing a good job. in general. Fairfax County is doing
Okay.
a pretty good job in general on these, so this is not much trouble. We're not creating trouble, I don't think.
All right, very good, very good. Well, so any questions, comments from task force members before I call votes? Okay, is everybody ready to vote? Anyone not ready? Okay, then, Tammy, if you would, or Bill, if you would, basically state your recommendation, recommend endorsement. Then we'll take a vote.
Please get ready to vote yes if you approve this chapter with the adjustments that you've heard are forthcoming. And those include staff, environmental staff, as well as John Carter's additions that he's mentioned tonight.
Or are we saying that we're going to accept any staff revisions?
No, I don't think that's what Tammy meant. I think she just meant that
Okay.
subject to we may be coming back to identify some of
Okay,
the.
thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Okay,
Most of them are in there already, right? The staff record.
It was just these few open areas that they
Yeah.
hadn't had time to think through.
All right. Any other questions on the motion? Is there a second for that?
I second it.
All right, good. Thank you, Bill. Seconded by Bill. Any questions on the motion? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, I'm going to ask that you raise your hand electronically. I think the task force members know how to do that. So I'm going to call on people to raise their hands if they support endorsing.
Walter, I'm using my iPhone for the first time on this
Oh,
because I couldn't
Alvarez.
get on. Hi, and I don't know how to vote using an iPhone. Does anybody have a suggestion?
Alvarez, you can just say yes or no if you want to
Okay,
do that.
good.
Okay, so for everyone else, if you could raise your hand, and I'll do a countdown electronically. Raise your hand in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I think I count 10. Okay. All right, and all those, okay, go ahead and take your hands down. Okay, all those opposed,
Wait, you haven't yet.
all those opposed, raise your hand and I'll count down. Opposed, raise your hands in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I see 3 opposed. All right. And then all abstentions. Okay, anyone abstaining? Everybody take your hands down from the previous vote. Abstentions, put your hands up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay, gotcha, Alvarez. Thank you. And I see 1 abstention. Okay, so that means a total of 11 in favor, 3 opposed, and 1 abstention. Okay, so that is endorsed. Okay, Bill,
There was
Tammy,
2
thank you for moving this forward. And I know I know it's been a lot of back and forth, and the back and forth still continues a little bit. But
And thank the staff, please. They really helped.
Okay, all right, Tammy, thank you for saying that. And it sounds like Joe and St. Clair and the others really did work through a lot of these issues with Tammy and Bill and others. So thank you, staff. Okay, all right, so that's good. We just got through item number 2. It's 6:01 p.m. Now let's see if we can move through the rest. If Lisa could put the agenda back up on the screen. Excellent, thank you. So let's, at this point, go through, and I would ask the chapter leads and/or staff. St. Clair, do you want to walk through these, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I can give a
Why
quick
don't you give an
walkthrough.
update, yeah, on the
Yeah,
status, and then if
so
the
yeah,
chapter
as far
leads
as,
want to pipe in.
as far as upcoming topics, we do have, I believe the land use discussion is going to be taking place next week. They're being scheduled for Monday and Tuesday. Again, I know staff has met with the land use individuals, so they were going to be able to take a look at things. So I think they'll be giving us kind of their discussion next week. I'll jump down to equity. The subcommittee has provided staff with a draft. Staff is reviewing that, so staff will be continuing to work with the equity group and providing feedback to them. That is ongoing at this point. Community health, we have a meeting scheduled for Monday. That's July 11th, with the subcommittee to be kind of going over staff's latest comments and feedback to them. So that meeting is scheduled for July 11th. And parks and open space, we have a meeting with the subcommittee scheduled for July 14th. So again, those discussions are ongoing, but that's scheduled for July 14th. I think that's the updates we have at this point.
Okay, thank you, St. Clair. Any chapter leads have anything else they want to add about any of those topics? Okay, any questions from anyone on that, on any of these topics and where we are? Okay, then let's go into the dates. We have a number of dates there, I believe. So we're looking at the 11th and 12th. Basically, several of these dates were when we were going to be doing public outreach. Obviously, we don't have a full task force recommendation to go to public outreach, so that's why we're seeing several of these odd-looking dates. We have the 11th and 12th, and so what's going to be ready for that date?
It's land use.
Are we gonna, Lynn, is that gonna be ready, you think? We'll be ready to go? From your perspective?
So are you talking about land use ready to
Yes.
go for the 11th and 12th?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's the right answer, Lynn.
If there was a problem, I would have said something.
All right, good. Just confirming. That's the right answer. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Alcorn?
Yes, Gary.
So I'm looking at these dates and, you know, I understand we have 8 days in a way to the 20th and then, you know, from there, but what about Monday, the 18th? Just trying to get this thing done.
Yeah.
Could we add the 18th and, you know, it'll fall as we try to wrap all these chapters up.
I think there's a P and Z meeting that night.
Yes.
Yeah,
Could we,
good
I
idea,
hate to say
Gary.
it, but could we go Tuesday and Thursday that week? I mean, I'm just trying to help us get through this.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
We
please,
have
Tammy.
youth, and then we have equity, community health, parks, and open space. We just heard from Sinclair, they're not having a meeting until later this week or the next week. So you can't shove them ahead when they're not ready.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Tammy. Good point.
We can set some
And
dates
burn
there.
density, that goes at the very end. Is that the story?
Well, we can
Right.
set some dates and then if the meeting can't happen, it can't happen. But, you know, I think having some planning here to have some task force meeting and pushing the others as well as we can.
Could we do equity on the 12th? My understanding equity is far along, but I'm not sure.
Good question. Does anyone have any info on whether that might be ready?
I thought it was in good shape, but I could be wrong.
Yes, could I ask just a general question? And this is to Lynn, but also related to equity and these others. To the extent they're still being worked on, are we going to see a revised version that we're supposed to act on when we before those meeting dates?
So
Yeah, so
what we are doing with staff is that we are, I'm sorry, did I interrupt someone else that was,
So yeah,
No,
I
please,
was just
Lynn.
going to quickly mention for one on equity. I mean, there's still ongoing session. There's still going to be for additional meetings between staff and the subcommittee.
Okay.
So I don't see that being ready for the 12th. And I think with just the land use discussions, I don't know if there would be time for another topic on that date. But again, yes, equity. I don't see that being ready for the 12th.
yeah, and what we've been doing with land use, we have had several meetings with staff and we do have a reconciliation dashboard that we are going to be talking to both of those dates. So
Do you have anything for us to read in advance?
in terms of the reconciliation dashboard is no different than what John Mooney and the Transportation Committee presented to us. So these are the items that are outstanding and what the position of the task force working group is, what the position of staff is, and how we have worked through those and what the reconciliation is to those. And anything that's still outstanding, of course, will be identified as well.
And where is this document? I've not seen it. I'm not aware of it.
You've missed a couple meetings. Lynn, can you give him a
I
link
think you,
or send him a
yeah.
link afterwards?
yeah.
And I hate to keep going back to this, but you know, we have work to do, but can we add, you know, well, I understand there's a date problem on one of those dates, but what about Tuesday and Thursday of that week? You know, we have July 19th and July 21st. Is that right? Yeah.
Gary, you're talking to the wrong people. The leads on those chapters are not here.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, set up a date and we'll see if we get to those. I mean, Parks and Open Space to me is a long ways down the pipe. And equity is a long ways down the pipe.
They may not be in town. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with assigning dates to people who aren't here to say yes
No,
or
I'm
no.
not signing any dates, Tammy. I'm just saying we can set up these dates for us to know about, and then we can see if we can make them. Or we can't be going into August.
Well, is that somebody? Well, at this point, not sure. I believe we probably will be going into August at this point. I don't see how there's any way around that.
Yeah.
Not excited about that, but what's the pleasure of the task force? Should we add those additional dates?
We've got an 11th and 12th for land use, and then we have the 20th, the 25th, and the 28th, and we have those other chapters. If they're ready, we can go. If they're not, we won't. The only thing that is flying out there with no answer is earned density. We agreed that's the last chapter anyway, so we've got potentially 3 days.
Okay.
Public facilities, I'm hoping we can just finalize on Monday. I'm unable to do a meeting on Tuesday. Chris might have some more insight, but for heaven's sakes, it's the parks ones who are the most important. All they need to do is just answer a simple question.
All right.
And if they can't answer it right away, it's probably not a simple question. But it should be very simple. And then all of you have, let me know if you want me to send it out a second time, but I had sent out
All right.
the revised version of public facilities so people can comment, and no one has commented. So I would say if we don't get any comments by Friday, we have to just kind of call it a wrap, close the door on it.
How about doing that on Tuesday? On Tuesday?
No, Monday. Monday.
Could be Monday.
And Chris, are you okay with that?
It's a P&Z meeting on Monday, Gary.
No, we're talking about the 11th, Tammy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the 18th again.
The 11th is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's Chris Caperton. I think we're okay for that date.
Okay, that'd be good. All right, so it looks like the 11th we'll do public facilities and then land use, at least first half. And then land use on the 12th. Any other thoughts on other scheduling of those still outstanding topic areas and chapters?
One minor comment.
Yeah, please, Bill.
By my calendar, July 28 is a Thursday, not a
Yeah,
Wednesday.
Good call. And Lisa, is that going to be a Wednesday or Thursday?
It was a Wednesday. It was the 27th, I think.
I think she indicated that you had another commitment on the 27th.
Yes, we had originally, I'm sorry, I didn't correct that on the agenda. It had originally been on Wednesday, Walter, but you have a conflict.
Oh, that's right. And so now we'll have a 5 to 7 on Thursday.
Yeah.
So it should say Thursday. There we go. Ta-da.
Lisa.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move forward with this as we, as the chapter leads on some of those outstanding chapters are ready to go. If, we'll maybe double up on 1 or 2 of those meetings. Okay, so let's move on. We still have 3 more or a couple more brief items. The approved topics to date, I don't think we need to go over those. And then the other topics for discussion, I don't have anything new. I don't know if there's anything new on the David Stoner discussions on terminology. We certainly heard Tammy, you and Bill addressed it in a way that I think it's going to be fine with the county attorney's office. Thank you for doing that. Tim,
I can give you guys who are still writing a little hint. Read the Reston climate plan. They use this entire format and they have a slew of good verbs there. So mix and match and pick and you'll love it. It's like a
All right, thank you,
thesaurus
Tammy.
of action verbs.
Very good. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so I believe the last thing we have is analysis of comprehensive plan, plan district zoning issues. We had an initial discussion at the last meeting. Since then, we did get a request to circulate the zoning interpretation from a decade or so ago regarding Reston National and Reston National zoning status. I don't see John Farrell in the attendee list. So I'm not sure if there was anything anyone else wanted to bring up about that at this point, but really this is an ongoing area of interest and study for a number of us.
Did I jump in there?
Any comments on that?
Yes.
Yeah, Gary?
I think that John was just using that as an example
Yeah.
of the importance of comprehensive planning. It wasn't related to Reston National. So I just didn't want to get off in another trail here. He's not on here to point that out, but I think that was what he was talking about. And, you know, it is important. We went over that with Bill Malin last week and so forth. So just my thoughts related to that. I don't think Bill's on here tonight, or John.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but thank you, Gary. And certainly, if anyone wants to bring this back for a more structured discussion, let Lisa or Shruti know in my office, and we can set it up for a future agenda.
No, Walter,
See-
I'm sorry, it's Lynn. I had my
Lynn.
hand up, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
That's okay. No, I just think that, and Lisa, I appreciate you finding that memo. I think I probably missed the discussion that John Farrell brought up at our last meeting because I missed our last meeting, which I apologize. But I think that the weight of that memo it is something that I think the task force really does need to take heed and make sure that these protections that have been put in place are maintained. And we don't want to do anything that is going to destroy those protections that have been put in place by changing language or making it softer, or maybe, you know, this is what you do. So I just think that the contents of that memo were eye-opening to me, and I really appreciated Lisa digging that up and sending it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate
Walter,
that. Yes, Charles?
it's Charlie. Yeah, I just want to say I remember the whole thing. The memo stated it was overturned or like disagreed with at the Board of Zoning Appeals. The county then went and provided extensive documentation to back up their memo, and the BZA continued to overturn it. But then it was in the circuit court, they agreed with the zoning memo that we all saw. So it was settled. So any changes now have to be through the comprehensive plan. At least that's how I understand it. So the golf course remains permanent open space or a golf course unless we modify the comp plan.
Yep.
Hey,
Thank you,
Charles,
Charles.
Murphy, I'm not sure that's what that's what the circuit court did. They essentially said it was an advisory opinion and they didn't rule on the merits. I think the memo is basically just staff's position and perhaps the Board of Supervisors' position as to the golf course. I don't represent them, but I don't think it's correct to say that they agreed with the BZA.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't read their actual opinion. All I know is after whatever they ruled on, the ruling of the BZA was overturned or put aside.
No, they allowed the 30-day period for them to appeal to expire.
That's to the Supreme Court of Virginia.
Right.
Right,
Right,
but I think
right,
what the
Charles.
Circuit Court did was to actually throw out the entire BZA opinion because it was based on an
Yes.
advisory letter. So I think it kind of goes back to wherever it was, but you're correct that the
Okay.
not to take it to the Supreme Court.
Okay, very good. And I see John Mooney, do you have your hand up or is that a previous hand? That may be a previous hand.
Sorry, Walter, previous hand.
Okay, no problem. Not an old hand, a previous. So,
Every
thank you,
every part of me is old.
All right, and Lynn has a hand up, but I think Lynn, that might be a previous hand as well. Okay. Any other comments or questions on that memo? Okay, again, if anyone would like a more structured discussion of any of that, just let the office know and happy to schedule that. All right, so I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda tonight. And congratulations, Task Force, it's 6:21. So you can have another 39 minutes of your evening back. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Good work, Bill and
Thank you.
Tammy. Thank you.
Okay. Good
Yes.
job,
Thank you,
everybody.
Bill and Tammy, great job.
Thank you.